Salon. It's part of our online conversation series as we live through the COVID moment, trying to stay connected with you. And so today, I'm really happy to welcome our guests, Emma Tibaldo, Artistic Director at Playwrights Workshop Montreal, and Jessie Stong, dramaturg and leader of the Young Creators Unit at Playwrights Workshop Montreal. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. We're all in our living rooms together, alone together, whatever that means.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we get a chance to talk to you guys. It was really such a frustrating, angry sadness when we had to cancel or postpone, I should say, the queer reading series this spring. But we are, as we've all talked about, I'm going to keep the love alive and find the way in the future to make it happen again. But a lot of people don't even really know what it is or about it. So I wanted to take a little time. Yes, postpone to a later date. There we go. I wanted to take a moment to sort of talk about Playwrights Workshop, our relationship to you at Centaur, and then Jessie to talk about the Young Creators Unit and the evolution of the queer reading series. So Emma, can we start with the idea of Playwrights Workshop? Everybody, it's sort of in the title of the organization, but can you talk a little bit about what Playwrights Workshop does?
Yeah, so Playwrights has been around for over 50 years, created back in the early 60s when there wasn't really very much Canadian theater. And so it was built by a bunch of playwrights who got together who decided that they needed a voice in Canadian theater. And so there was born Playwrights Workshop Montreal. And over the years, it's been run by many artistic directors who have done excellent work, who've worked with playwrights from across the country. So we do work with playwrights from across the country. And our primary focus is a dramaturgical focus, meaning that we work with playwrights and their work and trying to support the development of new ideas, new ways of working, of concepts, of really working to get to the depth of a play with a playwright. A playwright or creator, it's not necessarily, we work with creators who wouldn't call themselves necessarily playwrights, but it's always around the idea of the material that is like the fire that creates performance and theater.
Oh, I love that. The fire that creates performance. That's beautiful. And I know, it's good. I'm going to write it down. It's really beautiful. And so, Jessie, how did you become involved with Playwrights Workshop? I know you're a playwright yourself and an actor and a creator. So what's your
when I was graduating from National Theatre School, Emma was the director of my third year play. And so we kind of hit it off. She was like the yang to my yin, I think, or like opposite attract or something. And then so I just came on as an administrator, assistant kind of job right out of school.
Fantastic.
And then I had already done some youth work in Toronto, and we had the idea of wanting more young people and to more emerging creators. And so we started applying for that funding and building this group, right?
Fantastic. And so you've built the Young Creators Unit.
Yeah, 5 years ago. This is the 5th year that we've done it. But yeah, we started it together 5 years ago. And yeah, we've done over 100 young creators in 5 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
it's really fantastic. It's important. It's interesting. We're all NTS grads, and I love the way that connection and the looking forward to the next generation, and bringing people along from that school, because it's such a wonderfully a rich environment to come out of.
So much of that too was so many people come to Montreal for schooling. There's so many great theater schools here, and then they leave to go find work somewhere else. And so this was part of that as well, to try to create something for when they're out of school or still new. There's somewhere to go work to build,
And to build the community here in Montreal too, which I think is something that we're all very invested in, to try to find the way to keep the English community and the multilingual, diverse community alive. So the Young Creators Unit has a diverse group of folks involved in it. And then how did we get to the idea of the queer reading series? I remember when we were doing Hosanna a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of conflict in the Montreal theater community around transgender representation in theater. And I was trying to find a way to create a forum for that conversation. And I reached out to you, Jessie, and you did this amazing thing of creating what was called the discussion disruption, so that brought everybody to the table who had an interest and a stake in what it means to be represented in art from the queer community. So can you talk about that a little bit, and then take us into how we got to the idea of creating the queer reading series?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to go back. I think I had just worked with the NAC Disability Summit. We did that. Playwrights was one of the co-dramaturg supports for this big disability summit where all these artists with disabilities came together to do the same thing, to disrupt the narrative and to disturb the status quo and talk about what is theater from a disability perspective. And so when Hosanna came out, and there was a lot of back and forth about this, it's a play, it's an older play, it's from a different time. And so there was a lot of talk of how do you do this play representatively and have everyone in the room. And so it was just kind of the same thing I thought, is make a circle, bring people together and just talk about it and be open about it, transparent. Don't be afraid to be messy about it. And so you were really generous by hosting the Salon there and letting us do that, and being very open about you're just here to learn and listen, and letting the people who are at stake. We had a panel of people who are gender creative, trans people, queer people, and also gay male French Canadians, right? Because that's also another perspective that the play started with. And we talked about it and made it an exercise in learning rather than a censorship thing, you know?
Yeah, it was really an amazing conversation. I learned so much from everybody involved in that, and I really appreciate it. And I remember after it was over, I thought, this is a conversation that shouldn't stop here.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised when I got to Montreal to realize that in Toronto we have Buddies in Bad Times, which is this amazing sort of place for the queer voice and difference and all of that. And we don't have it here in Montreal. And Centaur has been on and off a place for that, but we haven't sort of codified it in that way. And so you and I talked a little bit, and you came up with this wonderful idea of the queer reading series. And so what did that come from for you? Did you think that it was, just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think the underpinnings of it is that Emma in the years of her leadership has made a real feminist organization, and it's known as being a feminist organization. And especially, we talk about NTS, but I think a lot of the work we did with Concordia is a very strong feminist theater as well. And I think that created kind of an underpinning. So when we started this Young Creators Unit, it was already known as a feminist organization. I was already known as a queer artist in a place where there's not as much queer art as there is in Toronto, I think. And so naturally, the youth who came just were very queer. We had a lot of queer youth coming in, and it was like a little unicorn center, and strong women and female writers also. And so it just became a very queer positive space. And so as we were churning out these pieces every year with these young, queer, interesting voices, it just seemed like a natural thing. Let's get it out there, get the narrative out there, and growing with the youngest writers we can find, you know.
Fantastic. So Emma, can I talk a little bit about creating? So when you're supporting a play in that sense, then, can you take us through a little bit the kind of trajectory of a play when you're working in a writer's unit like that? The steps that takes us to this point where we want to put them in front of an audience. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, the Young Creators Unit is designed by Jesse. He's designed the way that unit works. So there's quite a specific process to it that I think Jesse could speak to a lot more clearly than I can. In terms of play development and Playwrights Workshop Montreal, our focus is always the playwright. So it's about figuring out what the playwright needs in order to move the story forward. So, if there are plays that come out of the Young Creators Unit that need more support and are ready to go to a further step, then we'll start having dramaturgical conversations, and then a variety of dramaturgs can come in at that point. And they can continue as part of our own programming into workshops and then eventual workshops. But in terms of the queer reading series, it's basically Jesse who has been spearheading the plays that he feels that are at a place that they're ready to meet a public. Because obviously not all plays are ready at the same time, and we have to be careful about bringing things in on stage before their time, because that can be just as disruptive as supporting. as not support. Well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Bringing stuff too soon can be detrimental to the process of a play.
Yeah.
So, Justin, you want to talk about how you've done that for the queer reading series?
It's very different every year. It's sort of like the pieces. It's the pieces that come for as long. So some people in the unit have never written anything in their whole life. Our youngest member was 17. We've had a few 17-year-olds. Some people in the unit are pretty close to being pretty established. They just happen to be 29 years old. But we go from 18 to 30. And so in the first few years, it was just about creating and making space and group. But then a lot of our young creators started going to Fringe Festival right after. We finished in March or in April, and they're off in June. And we started having 6, 7, 8 plays getting produced right after our unit. And then, they started making connections with our organization, and we wanted to do more with them. Connections. We bring in a lot of guest directors from the community, and there's connections made, and artistic things spring from that. And so the queer reading series was just like, here's these pieces that need an audience to come in. So we make it really clear that it's not finished work and it's not polished productions. It's a reading series. It's about us being at a point where we need feedback and we need audience to hear this and feel this piece, right?
It is interesting, isn't it, how there's a point in every kind of theater process, whether it be a new play or a new production, that the audience becomes key to finding out really what you have made. And that's the thing that in this moment is so crazy for all of us, not having the access to an audience for everything that we're doing. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've been thinking a lot about that. The first version that we did was last year, and it was such a great week. I loved having those young artists in the theater, and it's important to me at Centaur that we have a core audience, obviously, that we're 50 years old plus as well, and our audience is very established in many ways. But I love the opportunity that things like the queer reading series gives us to expand the notion of what Centaur can be as an institution in the city. And so the audience that you bring and the artists that you bring through the queer reading series are so exciting. Can you talk a little bit about the first year group that we had?
Well, I remember one moment that, Emma, you'll remember too, I think, where there was like a Centaur regular person who had not been to queer art, it seemed like. And it's not that, not to say that they're all, I mean, he was a regular Centaur and he was in the front. And when we did the talk, he put his hand up and he said, I have no clue what just happened. Like, what is this play about? Like, he was completely lost. And it was this great moment of exchange where the playwright was just really generous. It was the playwright performing it, Nathaniel. You got the names up there. Yeah, Nathaniel Hanula James, who wrote the Flamingo play, the Untitled Flamingo play. And it's a puppet show about a queer kid who's gender creative and wants to wear a princess dress. And it's very zany and it's not finished and it's puppets and it's people. It's hard to follow. And he was just very genuinely not being critical, just being like, I'm confused. And we embraced that. And there was even other people in the audience who responded to him saying, that's good that you're confused. And thank you for sitting through it and being confused. Thank you for putting your hand up and saying you're confused. It became a place where it's interesting that we just talked about how right now we don't have our audiences and how important that is, because for queer people, often you're performing for heterosexual audiences. For many years, that's how our theater was. It's you make it for the straight audiences. And so another great thing about the queer reading series is we reached out to the queer people, the queer organizations, and we bring them into the space to have an audience giving us feedback who's part of us as well as outside of us, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the original question was now.
I was just asking you to take us through the shows. So you talked about Nathaniel's wonderful Flamingo show.
Which is a great piece, and we're actually working on it with youth theater right now on a little residency, but we're going to try to make it digital, which is great. Put a camera, kind of like Kid Koala style camera through the performance, through the puppetry. Fantastic. And it's all played with little children's toys, so it's a really cool little piece. Ella Coleman did Exits, which was like, it's like Moby Dick. A girl who loves Moby Dick questioning her sexuality meets a lesbian in an alleyway, and her mind is blown at 16 years old. And that piece went on to the Fringe and did really well as well.
It was
And
beautiful.
it's a really beautiful, both of those were really awesome pieces. But Ella's, because Moby Dick is so dear to me.
I just loved, I loved the way she found her way through that piece of literature into her own story and her own awakening, which was just, it was beautiful. Yeah. And then Gabe, Ava in Rio.
Yeah, Ava in Rio was what I loved about Ava in Rio is that we get a lot of the suffering suicidal script in queer narratives, and we get a lot of the coming out narratives in queer narratives, and that's important because that's still part of the story. But what about the deeper stories? And so Eva in Rio is this trans woman who wants to get her surgery in Rio, but that's the through line. But there's so much psychological things going on. It's like a nightmare, dreamscape, fantasy. I can't describe it properly, but all these fantasy absurd things happen, and it's more about her wanting to be famous and her wanting to be loved and her wanting to have a lover and her wanting to be popular and be religious and all these things that a complex trans character played and written by someone who's gender creative. It's really powerful. It went on to the Mai and had a production. I can't remember the year though.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Gabe is such a great part of the community. He's so active and creative and supportive inside the community at large. So it's great to see him taking that.
Gabe, they're like there's someone that I always depend on too, because they come, like they did the panel with us.
Yes.
For the Hosanna thing, they co-hosted it with me, and they're just somebody that when I first met Gabe was this little skinny 20-year-old right out of Dawson, I think, and
skinny 20-year-old.
In the next few years they've become very like so engaged, and I think the Young Creatives Unit did have a lot to do with that. Not to toot our own horn, but they became really engaged and part of boards and part of organizations and have done so many things. It's hard to believe Gabe's only 25, I think, 24, 25.
But I think that's an important thing that you just said there, Jesse, is that you must give people a platform to be who they actually are, and give that and celebrate that celebrate them in that platform. And I think that the queer reading series is the opportunity for that, that you created for these young people. And I just think it's phenomenal. So the queer reading series that never was, that will be in some way in the future. Who was on the lineup for that?
So there's 3 pieces. Emma, maybe you talk about A Song of Fiction a bit more, because we've been doing a lot at Playwrights with that one. Can you talk a bit about it?
Yeah, Trevor Barrett's been developing the script and has gone through a series of workshop with Fatma Sarah El-Kashaf, who's a dramaturg at Playwrights Workshop Montreal, and they've been working on the play for quite a while, and have been bringing in the musicians to do the musical part. So the development of the piece has been in tandem with the creation of the music and the rehearsal of the music that has gone into it. So yeah, it's at a place where it's ready to meet an audience for it to move forward from there, because it is a musical. It does need an audience to react to see where the story needs to go from this point onwards. So yeah, that was.
I was so excited about it. Trevor had told me about it, and I was really looking forward to seeing this point in its creation. Who else is on the list?
And
I want to save time for questions.
Yeah, I know we got to do the question time still too, right? There's still Gay When I'm Not in Love by Johnny Poirier, and she was in the unit last year. Wrote this eco drama comedy apocalypse dystopian drama, and then she actually went through the Black Theatre Workshop AMP program this year with the play. So she did a year with us and then a year with them, and now the play's in a really funny, amazing place. And then Waiting for Janice by Kate Hammer. Kate Hammer is a stand-up comic and a content creator and a playwright and just all over town doing everything. And Waiting for Janice is an adaptation of Waiting for Godot. I'm hopefully directing it. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's the funniest, weirdest thing I've ever read.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, we're going to, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to try to do in the future, but we have about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to see from our backstage people, if we have any questions. We want to open it up to our viewers. It's the weirdest thing to think about there being people out there viewing us, because I'm just thinking about the three of us sitting here.
Everyone's zooming.
But if we have any questions, but while we wait for that, I just wanted to start to talk, Emma, a little bit about what we like. Do you think it would be better to simply wait till we can actually gather and put the shows back on stage, or do you think it's worthwhile to consider creating an online version of the Queer Reading series this year?
I mean, I think it's a great question to put out there. It would be amazing for us to meet with the artists and ask them what the benefit would be putting it online, or whether they prefer to wait till there is an audience. I'd imagine that for some of them, putting it online wouldn't be as helpful, obviously, as having it in front of an audience. But maybe in the meantime, it's the best that we can do, and maybe it is something that they're hungry for. I do think it's I think we should ask. I think it should be a community decision.
That's right.
Talk
Rather
about
than
it,
just doing it. Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
What about you, Jesse? Do you feel the same way? Do you think one piece would benefit more than another? What's your thought about it?
Yeah, I think that it's just about it being beneficial to the work. I think all the pieces are at a place where I think in my dramaturgical opinion, there's not time to be like, let's make a digital thing of it, let's produce it, get it made. I think it's more of a time where you do need a play you don't know what the play sounds like till you hear it with the audience, right? And so I think that if there's a way for us to do it where we get that feedback, then we should do it. I think we're going to see a lot of innovations in theater.
Mm-hmm. Well, we could put 20 people in the big theater, and you know, I mean,
a drive-in version of it. I don't know, but we just have to think about how do we make it not just a churning it out thing. How do we make it a dramaturgical process, right? But there'll be ways, I think.
That's actually a good point. Go ahead, Emma.
No, I was just thinking, there's a million ways to do things, and we just have to take the time to sit down with the creators, because I'm sure they have many ideas of their own of how it can get done. I mean, it can be, put all the musicians on a truck bed and drive it around town, and I don't know, stop at parks. Who knows?
Queer reading series on the road,
right?
Or how about on the portico?
The portico, right? Or
so that we're all outside.
Yeah,
people can come by.
And do it in different communities. Yeah.
We've got lots of plans, but we do. I think the main thing, the most important thing being that we need to actually talk to the actual playwrights to see what they want. And I think that's the thing, as we sort of get to the end, I think that's something that is so amazing about Playwrights Workshop Montreal, because the act of playwriting, the being a playwright or being a creator of theatrical content is such a lonely thing, right? Like, it is notoriously lonely to be a playwright. So I think that Playwrights Workshop has been a leader in the country for providing a space and a time. I mean, I remember when I was here at theater school, Peter Hinton, back in the back of the building, typing The Swan, and just sitting there sweating and yearning and striving to make that into the incredible piece of theater that it became. And he's just one of thousands of playwrights who've gone through the various incarnations of the place. But I think what you've done, Emma, in terms of the Montreal community, has been really, really special, and it's something that should be celebrated. And I'm looking forward as we develop into the new world of COVID, and that's going to be my next final question for you guys. But I think from my perspective, there's a grand opportunity for creating more links to Playwrights Workshop and Centaur, and finding ways to really be a support for this creative community, the diversity of it, the multilingual aspect of it. Everything about this community is so unique in the country, and I want to find as many ways as possible that we can build it from the ground, more, not just from the ground up, but build it up.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's the dream of Playwrights Workshop Montreal has always been to be a collaborator with the theater companies in the city that are really interested in work that at its core has an idea of wanting to experiment, wanting to take risks, wanting to hear the voices of the people who live in this extraordinary city. But and so to hear you say that live, everyone heard it. So no, I'm just kidding. But it is really heartwarming, and yeah, it is something I've been working for the last 10 years towards. And thank you for talking about it.
It's really apparent. It's a really great thing. So just our final thing is, there's Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Thank you. What's your COVID dream in a sense of, I'm trying to find with everybody I talk to in these, what is the silver lining on the other side of this, do you think? What's your hope?
For me, my hope is that we get to slow down just a little bit. And I know it hasn't happened in reality. We've actually been moving faster because we've had to make 20 different plans for everything we do. But if we could find the time, because we have been meeting as a community, and so I do feel that there's a closeness that we're starting to create. If we could capitalize on that, if we can pool resources together, if we can create hubs where we can really exchange expertise, which I think is something that's come out of COVID, that we work better when we work together. We work better when we share information. We work better when we think of ourselves as a whole and not as separate entities, and that we really fight for equity, that we really fight to have everyone be part of the conversation that we're having. So yeah, I think that's my wish.
That's beautiful. How about you, Jesse? What's your chakra wish?
No, it's very similar. Yeah, I wish everyone would work on their chakras daily. I think it's like very similar. I think what theater does best is sometimes it slows us down. It makes us stop. It makes us listen. And I think that there's a movement in theater for slow movement, for slow creation, and taking the time it takes to make something beautiful. And I think theater is an investment. It's not as quick. You have to sit through it. It's got these elements of making us stop and think and reflect and slow down. And I hope that that's where the future is going. Even in the most basic sense of, like, you can't just bowl up the street anymore. You have to stop if someone's coming. You have to give some distance. You have to think about others and be empathetic right now. And I think that that's not happening necessarily, but I think that's where it could happen is we learn a bit more about the qualitative nature of slowing down and listening.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I think that is what is ahead for us. There's an NTS graduate. I love hearing ideas programs have grown and changed. Thank you for listening, Janice. It's great to see you. So I think we're just at the end of the time. I wanted to just give you guys a moment to talk about the Young Creators Unit presentations that are coming up. Do you want to just give us the little details on that?
I knocked over my flower in excitement. Yes, May 29th and 30th, we're doing a live stream at 8 p.m. both nights. We have 20 young creators, so it's 10 a night. What we've done is they all do 5 to 10 minute samples of their work. We do it over 2 nights in our studio, but we decided this year that what would be best is everyone films their thing. Some of them are fully produced kind of things. Some of them are very basic script readings. They're all the idea of unfinished work, getting a sample of it, giving us feedback. So rather than doing it live and making it scary, we decided to just do videos, but anyone can come to the live stream party. We're going to play it live. We're going to have all the young creators in the comments listening to your feedback and interacting. May 29th and 30th, 8 p.m.
And it's, how do you get, where do people find it? Is it on
our Facebook page or playwrights.ca, or if you just look up Young Creators Unit, Playwrights Workshop Montreal Showcase 2020.
Great. So
we should have had an answer for that, Jesse.
This link right here.
Where's the link?
But go to playwrights.ca or go see Playwrights Workshop Montreal on Facebook. It's all there.
It's on a
Fantastic.
Facebook page,
Yes. Well, the young generation understands all of that. So
Yeah, it might take them a while to find it, but that's okay. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be there for sure. And I'm excited to see what's coming up. And next week, I can say that we have our conversation is with the beloved former AD of Centaur, Roy Surrett, who will be joining us from Vancouver. And we'll be hearing about what he's been up to at Touchstone Theatre out there. And he's been staring at English Bay, I know, because I see on Instagram his beautiful photographs. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. And I hope you have some time. I know Emma's looking forward to some chocolate cake. And Jesse's looking forward to the forest. So,
there.
So enjoy the beautiful weather, and thank you very much. And I want to also say thank you to all the people who've already donated to our COVID relief campaign at Centaur Theatre, The Show Must Go On. And if you want more information about it, it's on our website, centaurtheatre.com. Remember, ça va bien aller. It's going to be okay. But only if we stick together. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
It has been fun. Isn't it good?
And yay for queers. Yay.
Yay. Absolutely. This is my new thing. It's because clapping doesn't really work. But this really works, I find. Yeah.